Welcome to Kart Class, brought to you by 18 times Australian champion David Serra. Kart Class strives to give kart racing drivers the fundamental driving skills, kart setup, and the mindset required to take you from beginner to winner. Your host, David Serra, has over 25 years' experience in kart racing and is the most successful driver in Australian history.
G'day guys. All right, so we're joining our Kart Class podcast today by former IndyCar champion and Indy 500 winner and the current owner of the WPK Racing Karts, Will Power. Mate, thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
So, mate, Will, you've got your own kart now. Now we know you're in IndyCar and you guys have to race week in, week out. What sort of got you into getting your own brand of kart?
Well, in 2019, I raced at the Supernats in Vegas. And Billy Vincent was my mechanic that weekend. And he actually was my crew chief when I first started at Penske in IndyCar. And at the end of the weekend, he said, "Hey, man, you should have your own kart." And I was like, he did all the work. He was pretty keen on it. He, spoke to someone who was in contact with Kart Republic, and it just went from there. And he put all the hard yards. And because I love karting, and we kind of talked about it as something that might be able to help young people have a way to get from karts to cars. That was the ultimate goal, which, we haven't got to that point yet, but, have helped some young guys. And that was the whole concept of that.
That's pretty cool. Like, obviously, it's very rewarding to see your own name on a brand of kart, and you're seeing kids that are getting their personal best, or maybe they're getting their first race wins in the Will Power kart. And now we're seeing them in Australia, and we're seeing them in other parts of the world as well, which is obviously really cool. What sort of involvement do you have at the racetrack when you're racing with these other guys?
Because I race myself, but I've found a couple of kids that don't have much money but are really talented, and just funded them for a couple of races or hooked them up with the right people, or kind of pointed them in the right direction, or supplied a chassis, this sort of thing. That being around the racetrack, that's what I can do. These kids, they're very good. They understand setup. Obviously, the real young kids get coaching from pro karters, because racing has become so specialized now that everyone's a specialist at each discipline. You got IndyCar, you got Formula One, you got V8 Supercar. They're all different disciplines, and they require a different way of driving. And obviously, go-karting is another one of those disciplines that's ultra competitive. And when you're looking for those last little bits, you kind of look to someone like yourself to get that. Like I personally would ask you questions on how to be fast in a kart. Every level of sport has got to that point where everyone's very specialised in that discipline.
And so we saw your race last weekend, and we've seen like Kyle Larson and Joseph Newgarden and things like that. How hard is it to adapt going from a race car and into a go-kart and competing against these guys who are racing, week in, week out?
You have to back everything up a little bit. You can't attack as much in a go-kart. So it is something that you have to, get re-acclimatized to and get yourself in the rhythm of a go-kart. With an Indy car or a high downforce car, you can attack a lot more. And they are different disciplines because, the car's very nimble. The braking zone isn't quite as important as it is in a car. So, And then obviously understanding the setup is another thing in a go-kart. It's quite different to a car. So, a lot of little details to get right, to be right at the front in a go-kart. But the basic principles are all there. The basic principles where you can get within a few tenths are there. So, Newgarden got on it reasonably quick, and then it was very tough for him to get that last half second because he just hadn't been in the car for so long. It's just, the way it was.
Do you find yourself like, locking brakes up more or hitting inside curbs a bit more? Because, like you said, things just do happen a bit differently with the speed-wise.
Yes, that's all part of getting acclimatized to how the kart sets and the trajectory you take and all that. I mean, it's just resetting your brain to those little details, getting used to the brake pedal again. I mean, in an Indy car, you hit the brake pedal almost as hard as you possibly can because you have all that downforce when you first hit it because you're at high speed, and then you have a really long sort of bleed-off period. As opposed to a touring car, it's a very short period. When I look at a brake trace on a go-kart, the profile is kind of similar. You have a higher pressure first and you have a nice bleed off into the corner. So, there's a lot of crossover in many areas. But then, like I said, when you're looking for little bits, then it becomes a specialized thing. You can use your body in the go-kart. There's, your body's like a brace in the kart. So there are different things you can do to manipulate it to handle a certain way. So it's all those little bits that count in the end. I mean, you can get to a pretty good pace quickly, but then the last little bit's very tough.
That's cool. Now, what sort of restrictions do you have in place? Like, obviously, you did go and race and your other teammate did as well. Like, do the team say, mate, just be careful out there? Like, can you attack the race 100%? Or is it like, geez, my career is IndyCar and that's where I make my living. Can you still attack those races?
I mean, just experience, as keeps you out of trouble anyway. Because you know what a 50-50 move is.
Yep.
You're never going for, if you're going for a 50-50 move, 50% chance you won't come out the other side. So you kind of know that and you race that way in the kart, which if you look at the front of the field in the race we did at that US PKS race, 50 karts, the top 10 guys all race in that way anyway.
Yep.
They're pretty, if you're qualifying the top 10, you're racing good guys and they're not.
There's some respect as well between karts.
There's some respect. They race hard, but fair. But once you get back in that pack on Saturday when I started like 17th, it's pretty. I got sent, in one of the corners, and the kids are like, yeah, sorry, you kind of half went there. Yeah, it's just one of those things. You got to know who you're racing against. They haven't had many hard hits. Let's put it that way. In IndyCar, I've had years of some pretty big hits, so you realize what the consequence can be. But it's good. Karting is such good racing because there's no aero interference. When in an open wheel car, even a V8 supercar, you get behind a car, you stall out.
Yep.
In a go-kart, if you're 2/10 quicker than someone, you're legitimately going to go through the field.
Yeah.
Because you just get to the bumper and you go past another guy. In a car, like you can be a second faster than the guy in front and you'd be stuck. So I love karting for that pure racing fact is that you can, if you're fast, you'll race to the front and it's just, you can be on someone's bumper going into a corner, no problems and no aero wash. There is a little bit actually at a fast corner, you feel aero wash, but it's, very good racing, very pure.
So if a kid and their parents are looking to go from karting into car racing, what are the challenges going from just that father and son or that mother and, that father and daughter, mother and daughter, to then going to having a team around you? So, you can just bounce things off your mum and dad because you just know the relationship that you have. And now you're going to meet people that you've never met before. You're going at speeds that, you've never experienced before. What are those challenges like for drivers looking to make the step up out of kart racing?
Yeah, I mean, if you've just raced with your parents, it is definitely a different atmosphere. Obviously, there's some kart teams that are really big. I know over here there are kart teams that are quite big, and it's similar to what you will experience in those junior categories where you have an engineer, you have a data guy that you work with. You have to give good feedback. You have to be somewhat professional in your appearance. And all that's good training for if you want to be a professional driver. All those things do matter. So, you got to get used to working with an engineer and bonding well and giving good, accurate feedback so you understand each other. And then you'll have teammates as well. That's something that's just going to be through your whole career. You're going to have tough teammates and mind games, or it's just a tough gig. Like they're your teammate, but at the same time, they're given the same equipment as you, so you're expected to beat them. You're really judged on how good you are against a teammate in the same equipment. So there's all those sort of, let's say, pressures and things that you've got to learn to deal with mentally, which is good because that's what's going to happen. I mean, all the way up to Formula One, you can see that the pressure only mounts for that sort of thing because the stakes are much higher when you're fighting for a seat that earns a lot of money and it's a career. So, yeah, they're all the things that you'll go through. That's what I went through, all the way up. It's just the way it is.
And the thing is, at the top of any sport, whether it's karting, it's cricket, it's IndyCar, they're all very talented drivers at that stage. So it does come down to that mindset of, believing in yourself and having good people around you that are backing you in, week out. Because as you said, you're going to have some turmoil. You're going to end up with mechanical failure that's, there's nothing that you could have done to change the outcome. And it's how you bounce back from those setbacks to show which good drivers can keep, producing good results.
Yeah, that's for sure a big part of it because you just like you said, when you get to most of these junior categories, the top, like all the top guys are really good drivers. And that just gets tougher every time you get closer to the goal, which is, IndyCar, Formula One, V8 Supercar, all the junior categories, as you step up, get tougher and tougher in that respect. So mindset is a big deal. Like, it really matters. I mean, you can't being negative and almost setting something in your subconscious mind, when you think you're having bad luck, it's going to continue, it will continue. So you've got to have correct focus. It's just a matter, it sounds simple, but it's tough. You focus on the correct things. So when you're out there, it's just the next corner, the apex, the breaking point, just even breaking it down to those simple things is just in qualifying, hitting every apex, and that's just correct focus. If you're thinking about, where am I going to end up? What time did I do? What time am I doing? On your cumulative, on your dash, you're a tenth and a half down. All of those things are just incorrect focus. Being 100% in the moment, it is a very tough thing to do, is not have any other thought but the thought that you need at that time, which is a breaking point, and then making it almost a subconscious thing where it just flows really nicely. As you know, when you put a really good lap together, it's really just flows nicely. It's not really thought out. It's very in the moment, like you're 100% in the moment. You're not thinking of anything else but exactly what you're doing.
I'd say I get more mentally drained than physically drained. Like, I'm not the fittest kart racer out there, but I'm focusing so much on those micro points, like you said, like cracks in the track rather than a tyre barrier, like such small, parts of the track.
All the little reference points that you have made in your mind of breaking points, turning points, apexes, and where you're going to end up on the exit. I mean, all those things are so important. I can't tell you or emphasize how accurate the subconscious mind is. I work with someone really good who'd worked with a lot of different athletes. And the first time I ever met him, he showed me how powerful the subconscious mind is. He somewhat hypnotized me with this chain with a weight on the end. And he just said, don't do anything, just, let me. And it just followed the exact line. It followed everything he said. And that was just my subconscious mind. He said, you can self-hypnotize. And that was just correct focus. It's the same thing. If you think of anything else but exactly like and looking where you've got to hit the apex or the those exact points, break point to apex to exit. Yeah, correct focus sounds simple, but it's very difficult to keep any other thought out of your mind. And these days with phones and people have very short attention span. They're not good at focusing. So at the end of the day, when you get to that very top level, everyone is an awesome driver. And then it's about you mentally executing those small details. And then it's even deeper than that. You're digging really deep. Some people have it in them, that fire in the belly, that thing that you can extract something more out of yourself than other people can.
I think that's good for parents to listen to, because we're seeing kids that are driving at 6, 7, 8, 10 years of age, and they're expected to, they're doing it all alone. They're starting the engine, they're driving, they can't experience what you can at 15, 16 when you can drive on the road. And we're expecting them to punch out lap times within 1/10 of a second. And how impressive that is for kids that are just got a smaller, mental capacity as well, and don't live and breathe it every single day. And let's say braking and accelerating, hitting apexes, passing, race starts, how hard that is for parents to sometimes understand with their little kids.
It is. And, the earlier you do learn that stuff, the better, because then you're just setting those patterns, and the brain is very pattern based. It almost cements those neurons where it's very, repetition and becomes subconscious. So the earlier you're setting that stuff, the better. And, I got to reset every now and then and remember what that means. Like, I'll go and see, his name's Jacques Dallaire, and go through his whole program again just to reset my mind on how you should be thinking. Because you forget, sometimes you forget, when someone gets in a slump, you'll get in a slump and you don't quite understand why. But then when you go see someone who's sort of looking from the outside, it resets that mentality, which is, just go back to the basics of getting things right, which is just the correct mindset.
No, that's awesome. Now, do you have any other kart races coming up this year? Are you going to be racing at the Las Vegas Supernats race?
Yeah, I'm going to do Super Nats. I'm going to race. I'm going to race in senior there, so I'll be pretty fierce competition. So yeah, got my work cut out there with those guys. It'll be a lot of fun. No, Newgarden, he's signed up. He's racing senior. He thought GoPro was tough. I'm like, dude, add another 30 guys to the mix. It'll be like 80 karts, and yeah, it'd be pretty tough.
And that's really exciting for the kids who are going to be racing as part of your WPK team to have guys like yourself and Newgarden present there on the weekend, and just learning the way you go about things is going to be so much beneficial that they probably don't understand right now. But in 3 or 4, 5 years' time, they'll look back at these moments and go, hey, that was pretty cool. I remember having you in the tent at Las Vegas, and even just seeing the Michael Schumacher's, previously the Max Verstappen's racing at Las Vegas is really exciting for kids. As I said, they're just racing, having fun. They probably don't realise it just now how important that's going to be to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and it kind of gives them an idea of where you can end up, and it all starts in go-karting. So I would love to have been able to race against guys like Senna. You imagine that? You know, it's
just rocking
kind
up
of when you
kart
see
race.
on the track. That's what you'd be feeling like. Yeah, pretty cool.
No, that's awesome. Look, mate, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for giving us, some information to help these kart racers out looking to make the next step up from their kart racing into car racing. We wish you all the best for your WPK kart team and also your future IndyCar races.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on.
If you've enjoyed today's episode and want to learn more about your kart racing, be sure to check out kartclass.com.au for driving courses catered to all skill levels.